Hey guys, welcome to this new video of UNITY3D. So I'm gonna be continuing a series of tutorials that I've been doing about like creating objects out of an inventory. It's been 3 videos so far, so make sure that you kind of start from those. So you see I have like this kind of creation system. By pressing C in the keyboard, I can create these cubes around, and then I have these kind of different behaviors, either destroy them or move them. They basically move, but they move in a way in which is very silly, I would say. They just jump, right? So we're going to try to do something here, which is create a behavior that lives inside the cube, and once I click on it, we just basically call that behavior from the cube. So let's do that, right? So let's create a new script here. It's going to be a JavaScript, and it's going to be like cube behaviors, right? So if we go into my prefab and I get the cube, I could just basically drag this script there we go. So we have our cube now that has a script inside itself, right? So you can see here, and so here's where I'm gonna just describe a few behaviors, right? So so something like function move, we could say transform dot position dot x plus equals 3, right? So we have function inside our prefab, and now what we're doing here, which is literally kind of calling this when we click on the object, we are basically kind of telling him something, right? Like destroy. I'm gonna try to change that there's a command here that it's send message. Let's see how that works. So game object dot send message. So we could send the message to a game object to basically call a function within that object, right? So let's try to do that, because I think it's kind of an interesting concept of how we are kind of where are the behaviors living, right? So the cube might have its own behaviors, and we're kind of just calling some of the behaviors that are describing the cube. So let's say, what is the game object that we're going to call? Like here, so I'm going to comment the old version of behaviors, right? So move, I'm going to say heat dot transform dot game object. So that's the game object, and I'm going to just now use send message function dot send message, and the message is going to be move, right? Because that's the name of the function here. If we send the message move, and this guy has a behavior called move, that should still work. That's kind of the theory behind it, right? So let's see if that works. So first of all, I need to just say create some cubes, go to creation, like type mode move, and I'm gonna click, and you see that it's moving, right? So each one of these cubes have that behavior inside. So that's pretty good. So we're sending a signal, and we could just describe as many behaviors as we want, right? But what I think is interesting here is that we could use this function now to call a behavior in a different way. So we could just do a behavior that's a bit more. So what if we want to just make the guy move slowly to the right for like 2 seconds, right? So we're gonna do a variable here which is gonna be current time, that is going to be a float, and we're going to do a variable end time that is also going to be a float. So what we're going to say here is that if current time is smaller than end time, we're gonna activate the behavior transform.move plus equals, in this case let's put something small, 0.1, right? So but the time hasn't been set yet, so what is happening here is that I want to just be able to click on move, and what move is going to do is it's going to set the time to be equals to time.time, right? So the current time, whenever I click on that object, it's going to be the actual time in which we are right now, and the end time, it's going to be equal to time.time, so the same thing, but here we're going to add a little bit, right? So the number of seconds, so we're going to say plus maybe 2 seconds, right? So we're saying whenever this function move gets activated, we're going to add 2 seconds to the end time, whatever that is, and this function, it's going to always try to kind of move the object constantly to the right, and if we click move, basically that's going to happen for 2 seconds as time, you know, keeps going by, you know, like it's going to be moving forward 0.1 units every few seconds, like every second. So let's see how that works. So again, I have to just create a few objects, and then the move function this time should be like slightly different. So you can see the cube. I mean, if you look at it here, I can basically activate them. And you see that they are kind of just moving. They don't seem to be stopping though. That's something that we could check, because it's quite funny that they're kind of... So let's make it a smaller amount, right? So maybe 1.0 or 0.5 seconds. So definitely it's not stopping, right? You can see that our little cube is just escaping forever. Let's try to figure out why is that. Right. So it doesn't really matter. So current time. All right, so we're not really needing current time, we just need time, right? If the time right now it's, yeah, this is silly. Sorry about that, yeah. So we basically give 5 seconds to the time, and time keeps passing by, and then, so now we should be able to have 2 seconds. You see it stopped here now. So I can call it again. I'm following it. And I could do that with any of those. and they activate. So the behavior could be much smarter, right? Like it could be search, it could be like anything, it could be start kind of entering a mode of like fighting or whatever. So they're quite static, and then they just get activated for a few seconds. So let's do a variation of that, that we do it instead of like, this would happen, they wouldn't move a certain amount of, a specific amount of distance, because, you know, depending on the frame rate, the seconds might vary. Like this function might be called a few more times or a few less times. So what if we want a counter, right? Something that would happen exactly 10 times, right? So 10 times they move in a total of 1 unit. So I could say, well, the end time, it's gonna be an integer, and the current time, it's gonna be now an integer as well. And so whenever this, if current time, we're gonna say current time plus plus, right? And so, for instance, here, when we click move, current time is gonna be 0, end time is gonna be how many frames do we want, maybe in this case 10. And we're gonna start with 0 in both cases. So that function is not active the very first. So whenever we activate the function, current time is gonna go back to 0, end time is gonna be going to 10, and we're gonna allow that to happen 10 times and stop, right? Let's see if that concept would work. So again, create a few cubes, and you see that this time it's much shorter, because if you press the stats, we are working with a very high frame rate. But this has its advantages, right? Like, you know that it's going to be exactly 10 frames that it moves. So every time it moves, it's going to be exactly the same amount, right? So if you want to be geometric about rotations, this is a better way of doing it, right? Because you could, let's say you want to rotate it in 90 degrees, right? So let's stop that. Let's make this function to be a function of rotation. So we could say transform dot so rotate, and this one would work, let's say 0.9 or 0.0.0. That would be not rotating at all, but if we rotate in the y-axis by 0. By 9, right? So 10 times should be 90 degrees, right? Well, that's not the axis that I was hoping for, but it's still a funny effect. So yeah, it should be maybe that axis. Let's try the final one. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it depends on the orientation of the object, I guess. So that should be precise. I guess that in this case we are calling it, are we doing it 10 times, right? So 0 to 9. So we're doing it 9 iterations maybe. So maybe just put 10 there. And that should give us a bit more accurate. Well, you can debug it yourself, but it's the whole point that in a way, let's see, that one's just looking the wrong way. There we go. Right, so that's the point of just this kind of sending these messages, right? Oops. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it there. You can use this technique to just apply it to the other behaviors, and yeah, that I mean, as I said, if your function it's a bit smarter than just this move, you could basically have a very kind of strong function here of, let's say, seek a target or whatever, right? Like and you would allow that to happen so much time. The duration could be either controlled by time itself or by the number of counts of frames, or that you want to just activate that. So yeah, I hope that's good. I'll see you guys soon.